G'day everyone, this is Rangadad. Not financial advice, just the way I'm looking at the market. Had a choppy day yesterday. Fairly strong move up, but overnight, while I was sleeping, which is normally the case, Bitcoin made a move back down and seems to be getting a little bit of support here. So just cover off on these first today. So sentiment, smart money sentiment has actually gone up yesterday. That's a good sign. You know, smart money is more interested in getting into this market. I don't know that this is necessarily actionable yet, and I'll tell you why in a minute, but it's a good thing that smart money is getting back involved. Having dumb money sort of tick up as well at the same time means we could sort of be in this sort of area, which is fair. Like if we're coming out of a little dip, smart money's getting interested and dumb money's basically piling in as well, then we could get a decent sort of top before we get a big pullback. So that's just something to keep in mind. IBIT hasn't had much through the day yet today. Just refresh that again, just in case, because there has been a big one on Coinbase. So it doesn't make the top 100, but that's an interesting level to get a big trade come through on Coinbase. So that makes me suspect that we might actually be bottoming here. Never mind the title. I will explain where I'm coming from with the market turning red thing a bit later. But look, at the moment, Marathon Digital is not getting a bid here either. That's probably not a great sign, but the fact Coinbase has had a decent one, that's a little bit of hopium. Just hope it's not someone selling out right before it flushes. XLP and XLY are kind of both pretty flat. I think tomorrow the jobs data that comes out is probably going to be a market mover. XLK, XLV. So healthcare's had the biggest trade in ages at the top here. So that's not a great sign. That's a bit of a topping signal there as well. But healthcare coming back, typically healthcare is a defensive sector. So that could just mean there's a bit of risk on. XLE, so energy's pulling back after a couple of big trades. Looks like this is a defended level as well by the bears. So energy could be set to pull back a bit further. you know, metals and mining pulling back after a decent trade there as well. Just make sure that that's actually last 7 days. Yeah. So metals and mining pulling back isn't great, but anyway, yeah, CoinAnk showing a bit of a bounce here, and it's showing a lot of liquidations potentially above. There isn't a lot of sell orders in here, not compared to all the buy orders that we got below. So could be a little bit of a dead cat bounce here, but there was a bit of divergence between the CVD on spot and price action. So not a bad level for a bounce. It's flushed a bit of liquidity that was underneath these bottoms here as well. We have had two pretty decent bottoming signals here as well. Not really picking one up at the moment yet, which is a little concerning, but it's all relative to the previous ones. So CVD, this has gone back to my old chart. We'll go with that. Bear with me. Don't know why it did that. There we go. So more. So futures CVD is actually increasing a little bit. Looks like it's bottoming as well, even as price was coming down. So that's a reasonable sign that there is some buying pressure there. The bulls are defending this level quite heavily by the look of it. There was a lot of green on the bid-ask delta, which typically is a good sign that you're getting into a bottom. A little bit of selling coming through already, even though we've only had a couple of candles up, so be a little bit careful, but some okay signs for a pump there. So liquidation levels, just go to symbol. Just going to go to model 1 too. So we've picked up decent amount of liquidations there. These numbers aren't huge compared to what they have been over the past couple of weeks, which you'd kind of expect. There's tens of billions of dollars wiped out of the market. Yeah, it may want to come back down here. There's such a big gap between these two, it may not come all the way up into this one, around 98 to 98.4. But you would expect it to at least attack the 97.4 level before potentially going down a bit further. So just going to move out to the monthly. Not a lot down here for it. So upside would make more sense in terms of liquidations, but you got to be careful with that. There are some decent levels down around the 89 mark still. And we are still bear flagging in, so it's actually bull flagging. So a pullback on price action. So once we get a bounce up, like a decent bounce up, and then you start going chopping sideways and down, that's technically it's a bull flag now. They don't always have to break to the upside. Typically they will, but they don't always have to. Just going to come into the pivots again. This is a bit of a cleaner chart too, just to look at this trend line. We keep banging up against this trend line. If we break through that, then be a lot more confident that we're going to go up. Cyclic RSI in the 1 hour is kind of, it looks like it's resetting. It's in pretty well in the middle now. It literally could go either way here, which is kind of what you want to see at the bottom of a bear flag. A bull flag, sorry. Fuck. The other thing too is there is kind of a trend line through the bottom here. It's not a great one, but we could get some support off there, which would be basically recovery of this vector candle here as well, which would be a good thing. The issue is with pivots, monthly pivots, that is, we're a long way from this level here, which is sitting around the 91K. And you'd probably expect it to slip through that into the high 89s at least before bouncing. The problem there is we do have a bit of a decent downward trend line there, which, looking at it, it could actually draw this through there and pick up this level here a bit better. So if we did come down, even high 88s for a sweep and a bounce off this trend line, that's a definite possibility. I wouldn't say it's a given, but definite possibility. So the 1 hour is not looking quite like we're turned around yet. Still got half an hour to go. So this could just be a little pullback halfway through the candle. And then if we're closing above the previous hourly candle, then it should actually run back up. And we do have quite a few vectors on the way down, which would suggest that we'll head back up to at least recover them. Breaks above that trend line would be handy. I'd be cautious though, because we have been sort of breaking out and failing some trend lines recently. So same with this sort of thing here. It's something to be careful of when the market is so nervous. What was the other thing I wanted to cover? So BTC longs have started pulling back quite a bit, which that's not a great sign, because we haven't really bounced that high. So not ideal. All these indicators are getting, I mean, they're in the bearish control zone, but it's starting to tick back up. Just looking at this channel here as well, we've had a lot of trading through the middle of this channel. Like a lot of bounces off it, a lot of rejection off it. We need Bitcoin to make a decision as to which way it's going to go. And look, momentum in this regard is to the downside still. All the volume delta is still downside. We are expanding with volatility as well. So this could at least come down to the bottom of this linear regression channel. But I'd kind of expect it to keep coming down at least to the bottom of this channel again, which is going to be around the 92, maybe 92.5, which would pick up the bottom of this, and you'd kind of expect it to slip further than that. Not necessarily straight away, like we could get another bounce, but one thing I'll point out just on Bitcoin. So yesterday, zoom into the hourly because that's where I was watching it. So we got some pretty decent trend lines on, this is the total crypto market cap versus stables. And this trend line here is a decent one, but these are the two trend lines. So this one here has basically held up all the lows of this cycle right from the bottom. Well, right from September 2024, which was basically before the big leg up. Why isn't it showing the rest of the chart? Come on. Anyway, doesn't seem to want to load the rest of the chart. This one here is a critical trend line. Breakdowns of these trend lines have typically led to further downside as well. So, that's not ideal, but, long time frame sort of trend lines here. And as you can see, we rejected this one here, which is obviously a bearish signal, but I was looking at this breakout here yesterday, and it did come through with a fair bit of strength, and it looked like it was going to break above the that's the 50 EMA on the 1 hour, but it has rejected that. It's fallen back through all of these trend lines, pushed back up and retested this trend line on the hourly. So you'd have to look at this and say there ain't much else until this 14 level here. And that should be a pretty decent level, I think. It's touched that level as a horizontal level quite a few times back throughout history. Looking at it on here, like that's the last dip before the breakout. Just in here, so this green, I'll just turn off S&P 500 there, and liquidity. So this is the Bitcoin chart. As you can see, the last touch on that, it ripped to new highs. Here we've rejected that. I don't think it's coming back down to this level here, which, where are we? That would be around 67K. I don't think it's coming back there, mainly because, why don't I think that? I just think that's too much of a stretch right now. Unless we get back above, particularly this trend line here, this diagonal, back up into this range, then I do think we're coming back, but I don't think we're coming back all the way down to that initial breakout of the previous range. Could be wrong, but I think a pullback into this area should at least bring us down into the 88, 89 area and potentially 74, 75. Okay, so it's hard to tell from these because the amount of money that transfers from Bitcoin into stables isn't necessarily linear with Bitcoin's price. But this chart has been so good at predicting breakdowns and breakouts of Bitcoin. And at the moment, breaking down both of these levels, we need to see Bitcoin really pump back above in the next basically couple of hours before the close today. We need to see Bitcoin back above these. Otherwise, it looks like it's going to keep going down. Now, this could be considered a vector candle recovery as well. So it could just be a sweep and a move up. That's a little bit of hopium though. There is some vectors above, so it may want to come back up into there. But yeah, at the moment, if we fail this level here again, or even the 200 EMA again, if we don't break and close, sorry, the 50 EMA, if we don't break and close above that, then I would expect more downside. So key chart, unfortunately, I was asleep right when it was no. When did I go to sleep? Oh yeah, just as it was breaking out back above this high here. I went to bed thinking that I might wake up to a higher Bitcoin, but not the case. This will be another key level up here. So this is the 200 on the 1 hour. It has, I guess, provided some rejection previously, but it's not super strong. I suspect if we're breaking back above this level, then we should really retest this. Like, you'd be hard pressed not to expect a retest of this level, which would probably put in a lower high, it'd be a dead cat bounce, and then Bitcoin moves further down. That's just kind of the way I'm potentially looking at it. So it's a matter of if we get back up above here soon, and then we sort of make our way up to this area here, that's actually a lot of confluence there. I would expect probably rejection off that. That's out into, oh, that's just into Thursday. Yeah, next Thursday. But yeah, if we come back down in here, bounce, and then move back up, that's a possibility as well. It's just at the moment hard to be positive with Bitcoin breaking below these levels. Okay, go to Bitcoin on the daily and just have a look where we're sitting. So it looks like we're breaking down below that point of control again. We did close below it. We closed inside this other channel yesterday, so downside always had the potential. Realistically, on this chart, 93.9 is the next point of support on this chart. Do I think that's going to provide significant support? Maybe. It has hit it, and this is a very high volume traded area for Bitcoin, this whole value area. So maybe a little dip below that into the, actually, what would be interesting is if we actually had another wick below or a bounce off the mid band of this channel. So the mid band of this channel would come in around the 90K mark. So even a move further down, a wick down into 88 and a closure back above the mid band of this channel, that would potentially be putting in the lower Bitcoin for the time being, like temporary low. But yeah, that's kind of this region here. If we do fail this value area low, that region there is definitely the next target. And look, BBWP is increasing, momentum's to the downside, particularly if we close down around here. We would have to, I think, actually close above the value area high today for that momentum to tick back to the upside. The 5-day looks like actually failing. That's not a good sign either. But it's still at 3 days, so could be wrong. We need, in the next couple of days, we need to come back down here, find a base, and move back to the upside. We need like a three-day swing on Bitcoin to really have this tick back above the signal line and BBWP to expand. And then we can talk about new all-time highs. For the time being, this is looking pretty nasty on the longer term timeframes. Even the 2-day is squarely to the downside. It needs a big turnaround as well. Could be some key support around that 93 as well. So on the 2-day, a move down and then a bounce back up. above that 50 EMA on the 2-day would be a possibility. Yeah, at the moment it looks like it actually wants to keep going down. So looking back on so that was a rejection and further breakdown. Unfortunately, I had a freaking long sitting in there. It's probably triggered now. No, well, I'll wait till it bottoms. It was only a very small position size. What else? So in terms of why I think markets are going to go red, the main reason is we've recovered these vectors. We have pulled back from the top here. Certainly momentum's still the upside, and this is where it could get nasty. Like it could be a pretty big pullback because BBWP is resetting on equal weight NASDAQ and it's potentially putting in a lower high on the momentum versus a higher high on the price action. That's not a great sign. Coming into a resistance on S&P 500 as well. Again, with BBWP resetting, if we break this level, then no problem. It'll be a good run. The thing to consider is this doesn't look great. So equal weight S&P 500 is pulling back. We've recovered the vector. Momentum's squarely to the downside and BBWP is resetting. So that's a nasty sign. I suspect we haven't left any vectors up here. I suspect that we will come down and probably break through that level. And the fact that smart money's getting interested again, they will load up. I suspect we will bounce somewhere in this region. We could actually get down further, but yeah, it seems like it's going to get nasty soon. It's just whether or not we keep chopping in this range. If we go sideways, have a pullback in time, that's a possibility. But that's a pretty nasty candle so far today. ES1, so the minis look like they want to pull back as well. So the jobs numbers come in nasty tomorrow. That won't look great. The potential saving grace. Oh, sorry. The other reason I think it might actually be the start of something is the skew was quite positive yesterday. So that was a pretty good bounce on the skew. The issue is we haven't had the positive price action. The markets were up during the day, but they are pulling back. So for the markets not to sort of respect that bounce on the skew, suggests there's a bit of selling pressure coming through. And it might be a topping signal there. The other one is XLY, XLP is actually sort of breaking these last couple of lows here. It is closing higher at the moment, though. It's just momentum-wise, it's not looking great. So that it's starting to look like a bit of a rollover. What we may see here is a head and shoulders forming. It may just break straight through. I haven't looked at head and shoulders and how they play out on XLY, XLP, but if we do break it, you're talking about coming back into this previous high here back in November last year, which on the SPY would actually only bring us back into there. But I doubt that's where it's going to finish if we do pull back. So the bottom of this trend line here is a bit of a target. I think SPX back into this area is a definite, it's a possibility. There is a fairly strong horizontal line here as well. Probably down a little bit. Okay, so they're the downside targets. Upside, if we break above here, then you'd have to think it was going to this this channel again, top of this channel. Unless we start looking at sort of the highs not being as high as previous in terms of the slopes of these trend lines. But yeah, at this stage, it looks like the market is getting weaker. The market's finding it harder to get to new highs. This could just be what Wall Street wants you to think as well. Like the market can stay irrational longer than you can stay solvent. So we've always got to remember that. IWM, again, it's not looking fantastic. There is a bit of a channel here on IWM. Nah, you idiot. Hang on. Yeah, it's something to keep in mind. This channel. It seems to be rejecting the middle of that. Break below this channel. So break below some of these key diagonals on S&P. Like break below this diagonal here and bear market. There will be a bounce and a confirmation of the break, but you can bet everyone will be going bear on that. Just got to wait for confirmation of it. So yeah, consumer sentiment, non-farm payrolls is the big one, along with the unemployment rate. Yeah, making lower highs on consumer discretionary, and it looks like we're potentially basing on consumer staples. So there's some interest come through in consumer staples, then it would look like a rotation into defensive stocks. The weird thing is equal weight XLY XLP has actually still been increasing, making new highs. So that's a case for the bull side. We are still breaking down from this trend line on XLP versus SPY though. That's typically a sign that the market should pull back. XLIs, yeah, it's not looking great. Again, lower highs on some of these aren't ideal. KRE is still pushing higher, but it's not breaking that trend line. I want to see like a proper break of this trend line. ITB, yeah, home builders is actually momentum still to the downside here, and BBWP's just ticked up again. This is the target for ITB. If it breaks that, then yeah, I would expect there to be a fair crash in markets. Semis struggling with the middle of this range. Not a great look. Yesterday I was talking, this could potentially come up, fill the gap, recover this vector before we actually get a dump in the markets. That's still certainly a possibility, but need to see price action confirm that. DJT gold might be trying to base at the moment, but again, just the fact that this is broken down, you'd expect S&P 500 to break down as well. DJT's rejected that resistance level as well. DJI's looks like it's double topping potentially. VIX looks like it's had a little bounce off that trend line. It's not a good sign. The bulls would have preferred to see that actually break through, close below there. As I said, the skew read's going to be interesting today. If the skew comes down today, then I'd expect Friday and probably at least the first couple of days next week to be relatively red. The VIX 1 day is still heading up though. So that is suggesting that we haven't necessarily found the bottom yet. Or the top. How does this work again? I did figure this out. Yeah, when it peaks, you're looking at the bottom most of the time. Yeah, all right. It's not an ideal read, but you want to see this thing spiking to really confirm a bottom. And at this stage, that is not happening. So another couple of days down, this VIX 1 day to shoot up, then you can start considering a bottom. I think DAX is still going. Holy shit. New all-time high on DAX. What recession? Hong Kong market. Still a critical level, but it's moving up. UK market pulling back a little bit just after the high, but you see the DAX and the UK market actually are looking strong. TLT holding the gains so far, expecting it to come up into 91.3. And then we'll potentially have a bit of a pullback, but could be a reasonable move. High yield junk. Okay, so that's breaking back below this trend line. It effectively recovered that vector. Let's call that a recovery. I wouldn't expect it to necessarily bounce up further. Yeah, that's a sign that things are going a little bit south. This LQDIF, it is pulling back with price action, but yeah, it's looking a bit negative as well. 2-year and 10-year, the 2-year spiked a little. That's interesting. Don't know why I've got that in there. Oh, I think that's a shorter term trend line, which it would be breaking above if that is the case. Nah, I think that's random crap. Buggered if I know why that's there. I'll just delete it. But yeah, I mean, the 2-year pulling back. I mean, it could be pulling back in preparation for the market expecting rate cuts as well. Like that would make a lot of sense. And if the market's cutting rates, then you would kind of expect stocks to go up. But at the same time, it could be a signal that there's some underlying issues, and it's not always a signal for markets to go up. Dollar, I mean, good level for a bounce, but it's not a strong bounce by any means yet. Sorry, that's the 10-year, not the dollar. Yeah, I'd be surprised if it bounces too much from here, but could be wrong. Chinese 2 years flat. That's flat. Copper's still breaking out. A little bit of a weaker candle at resistance, but you kind of expect copper to at least pull back and retest if the market goes south. Gold pulling back, retest of the retest of the mid band of this little channel that it's been in. Not really a mid band, more so just key support and resistance most of the way through. Yeah, gold's still looking strong for the time being. Silver versus gold. Again, finding a bit of a base. Silver looks like it's trying to confirm above resistance there. Not a bad play. Oil. We did suspect it might come down to the point of control. Yeah. Looking at that, there's a fair bit of momentum in that to the downside. What you don't want to see is oil sort of breaking down below that 66.5, even just 66. Typically, that would be suggesting the economy is not great. Dixie finding a bit of support here off that 200. Potentially a trend line forming there. Don't really expect this to hold, but we'll have to wait and see. If yields go back up, then it may actually bounce, which would suggest stocks and stuff will come down. Let's have a look at, so this is, yeah. Looking at this, global liquidity is still headed to the downside, even after China's come back. I mean, it might find some support here, but for the time being, global liquidity is not in our favor. For the bulls, Sanja's stocks above 15 moving average has actually increased today. So there's a bit of breadth there. We could be seeing rotation, which may dampen any pullback. But geez, we're getting into some key levels here. Key resistance on S&P and others, but key support on Mag 7, for instance. Tesla pulling back. I'd expect Tesla to keep coming back at least 359. But yeah, 298 is a potential for Tesla. If it's getting into there though, you'd kind of expect it to keep coming down into 250-ish, which is nearly a 50% wipe off the highs. Wouldn't be great for the market. Looks like Nvidia got a bit of a pump on the news that Google wants to spend heaps of money on AI infrastructure. The market didn't like the fact that Google wants to spend heaps of money on AI infrastructure. A little bit of support down here. It was a pretty heavily defended zone on the way up. But yeah, shit. I mean, these things are leaving massive gaps. It's suggesting that we will potentially have another dead cat bounce that will close some of these gaps, I think. Microsoft retesting that trend line. It's not a great rejection of it today. bit of a hangman there. RK pulling back. Okay, this is first real indication that risk might be coming off a little bit. Apple, that might be why some of these are finding support. The bigger guys finding a little bit of support if risk is coming off. Amazon, yeah, I mean, no, I thought I had a trend line through those highs there. It's not, it's not a great trend line, I guess. But Amazon to break out of that would be a pretty good sign. At the moment, though, it does not look like that's going to be the case. Like BBWP is resetting, stochastic momentum's to the downside. You know, if Amazon are falling, Google's potentially falling, Nvidia looks like it could actually bounce. Tesla's falling. You know, a lot of these, Apple's falling. What's Meta doing? Meta's getting a bit of rejection here. There's a fair bit of profit taking, I'd say, at this level. It looks like it's ready to roll over. Could be wrong, but Airbnb, what the hell's going on with that trend line? Oh, that's like a best case trend line. If we break above that, I think I'd probably be happy with a break above a bit lower than that. AMD hit our lower trend line there, has bounced, but it's getting some selling today. Actually not a bad level for AMD to turn around, but if it doesn't, if we actually continue to downside here, then that's pretty well going to be confirming a bigger downturn on the rest of the stock market, I would think. That's a pretty big level to break. You'd expect AMD to at least come down into 93, 94. There are some vectors around 81 though as well. That would be a huge drop. This is the weird thing. The market overall has been going up, but some of these stocks are down 50%. Like AMD is down 50%. That seems nuts. That would be a 64% drop if it did hit 81. So some key levels that a lot of these bigger stocks are at to the downside. A lot of others are looking like rolling over, hitting key resistance to the upside. So I think it's like if you're trading US stocks, you'd be looking for individual stocks to trade. I think it's the key, and potentially just ETFs. I certainly wouldn't necessarily be holding a lot of these yet, but when you look at super micro, what a chart. Come back into a heavily traded zone, and it looks like it wants to break back above that. If that does, then it's going to be a pretty nice play, I would think, but I think you're also going to have a fair bit of resistance to get through. So it could just be another sort of dead cat bounce. ASML, it's pretty similar, really. These could just be big bear flags too. Similar here, bear flag, drop, bear flag, potential drop. TSM still in a channel to the upside. Stellantis is still below that level. Whoa, okay. So Ford earnings, what the fuck? I think from what I heard, Ford actually had some commentary that they thought things weren't looking great. The outlook for them, China's hurting them, stuff like that. So they did surprise with earnings, but obviously the market didn't like the comments, and that's a pretty big breakdown. Like that is back into this little level here, which may provide some support, but I'd probably be thinking forwards back into the $8.50 sort of area. That there should be a sign that the economy's not looking great, and the rest of the stock market will probably follow in due course. ASX 200, vector candle recovery. It's probably going to pull back today. XJO new high. No, sorry, not a new high. Just filling gaps. Okay, so total crypto market cap. If it finds support around this 200 EMA, then happy days. But at this stage, it could find support around the 3 trillion mark as well. ETH versus BTC. These guys are still going nuts. Good on them. At least someone's bullish about something. Yeah, I've covered that. Ethereum. That's not good. If we close below this trend line again, it's a rejection of a pretty decent horizontal line. It's a rejection of that trend line there, which is sort of the last hope, really. There is a heavily traded zone just below at about 2600. May provide some support, a bit of hopium for the bulls. I'd suggest the next level would be 2400 though. If we kind of expect some support there, to be honest, maybe down into the 2300s, but I don't know that we'd fully recover this whole week. That'd look nasty. Yeah. Let's have a quick look at CME. So CME looks like it's breaking down that trend line as well. Both trend lines, actually. That's been a trend line since the breakout as well. That there suggests further downside, and I would expect the gap close around 77 on CME. It's going to be a wild weekend, I think. Need to find some support somewhere around 91 to 90. A bounce from 88, 89 is entirely possible, but well, there's a fair bit of hopium involved in that, I think. Let's just put 100 on there. So the 100 EMA would come in at about 88,500. I think that's a good spot for a bounce. This trend line here will be an interesting one. I suspect we'll get rejection off that at this point in time, in which case then I would expect the gap fill. So for the bulls, we really need to find good support off here, a lot of buying. Look, BlackRock, there is a lot of bullish factors in the market, but price action doesn't necessarily follow that news. Those guys don't like buying at the highs either, so they'd be happy to get in a bit lower. Michael Saylor's apparently moving a little bit more towards XRP as well, which is interesting. Bit of news that came out today, I think. So yeah, it's like there's a lot of bearishness in this, but we do have a little bit of support. Just looking at all the different levels, it looks like somewhere around the 89K mark for a bounce seems likely at this stage. Litecoin, not a great rejection. There was a lower time frame trend line in there. It needs to find support at 98. If we don't find support there on the daily, then yeah, Litecoin probably down to 74, I'd say, which would wipe out basically all its gains from this last pump. In which case, it would look quite a bit like the bear market was officially kicked off, and any bounces would be met with selling pressure. But yeah, Sol needs to find support here. That's a longer time frame volume profile there. So that was the point of control previously. Not looking great. Stochastic momentum needs to really pick up here. It's a pretty big sell-off too. Like, you would expect at least a bounce on Sol up to 216 or so. It's just a matter of whether or not the whole market's turning to dirt or not. Back into 157 should find support, I think, as well. So that's a key point to look out for. XRP, yeah, XRP looks like it at least wants to retest the top of this channel, which is the 100 EMA as well. So we could actually get the opposite of what happened last weekend. We could get a run down into the weekend and then a pump over the weekend just to surprise everyone. But that's a fair bit of hopium. You need to see turnaround at key points, and it's not something we're looking at the moment. Let's have a look at Hype. Even Hype's rolling over. So Hype was holding up pretty well the other day. Hasn't fully rolled over yet, but yeah, not looking great. Sui's back down as well. Holy shit. Yeah, we're coming into some pretty key levels with these. If it doesn't hold $3, Sui should probably drop. It's likely to recover this week and potentially find some support around the $2.30, which is looking pretty nasty. Let's just have a quick look on the hourly, see what we've done here, whether we've confirmed anything. Okay, this is a little bit of hopium for you to finish the video. If we can break back above the signal line on the momentum, and we can break back above these diagonal trend lines here, then we may actually find the bottom on Bitcoin. It's looking like this could just be a retest. So I'd be watching this on the hourly. Hourly close anywhere within this region, and then a second close to the downside wouldn't look great. But for the time being, this is kind of what you want to see for the bulls. But that's the critical sign here. I won't be doing any longs until I actually see confirmation back above here, except for that stupid one I put in. Yeah, I think that's about it for today. Good luck. There is a little bit of turnaround on the 15-minute as well. Cumulative volume delta's still got a bit of momentum to the downside, but it might turn around soon. Might being the key key word there. Yeah, there's a lot of overhead resistance to get through. All right.